Welcome, Catherine, to the Inner Wisdom Community Wisdom Within event. And it's that time of the week again.
Yes. Thanks,
So,
Marion. It's so good to be here.
so this week, I thought that we would talk about how to love ourselves, because it's been a theme in my life for a very long time. And I think for many people it has been. And I know that there's a misunderstanding, isn't there, that people look for that feeling of love when they look outside of themselves. You know, if I'm thin or I'm pretty or I've got the right job or whatever it is, that will affirm that I'm good enough and I'm lovable and loved and all of that. So I thought we'd sort of explore that because I know that I fall in and out of loving myself quite a lot. And I'd love to know more about that. And my focus for the next year or so is all about loving myself, actually. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So what thoughts have you had about it?
Yeah, it's been so nice to reflect on this, Marion, when you mentioned the topic, because I immediately realized that, the idea of self-love and self-acceptance sort of came on the radar for me, a number of years ago. And I think I said to you, I wrote a little message to you saying that the idea of self-love really started me on the
Yeah.
journey of exploration,
Mm.
because I noticed that, I didn't really know what that meant. What does it mean to love yourself? I grew up with the idea that that would be equal to selfishness,
Mm.
that to love yourself was something selfish and egotistical, where you were, possibly self-absorbed. And so there was a lot of confusion, for me around what that meant, but something about it drew me. I started to realize that I was, let's say, I guess I became aware in my, early 20s that I was living a life, or my 30s, probably 30s is more accurate, that I was living a life that didn't feel particularly meaningful to me. That somewhere along the line, I'd started to put um, other people's preferences ahead of my own, to the degree that my life was filled with activities that didn't actually feel meaningful to me. And I started to wonder how I would ever rectify that. Um, and the idea of self-love started to pop up and come onto my radar. Because I had by the time I was in my late teens, my idea of self-worth was, am I making somebody else happy?
Mm. Same with me.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So it took a long time for me to realize, even become aware of the fact that I was doing that, because a lot of it was unconscious. And I also realized that I didn't have a voice in the world. I was so focused on, am I making somebody else happy? I was young, it was my parents, God bless them. And later it was the men in my life, mostly. So when I started to encounter this idea of self-love, I really recognized that it was lacking in my life. And I woke up to the need to stop looking outside of myself. This would be, after 2 failed marriages very early in life. I thought that, happiness is going to come from somebody else loving and appreciating me. And so I was married young, because that meant I would be loved. And, that 2 marriages, both of them lasted, just a little over a year.
Wow.
So you can imagine. And I was devastated. For me, marriage was for life. So I really had to, after, 2 strikes, I decided, okay, this is not the right direction to look in. I'm a slow learner. It was like, okay, I have to stop trying to get the love I'm seeking outside of myself, because this is too painful. 2 failed marriages. And I was in my, I wasn't out of my 20s yet. So the gift in that was that I started to explore what the journey home to self-love looked like. And I have to say the biggest insight for me around this was it changed from looking like something that was selfish to taking responsibility.
Yeah.
So it went from, it's like, as I started to explore it, I realized that self love wasn't selfishness or self absorption. It was who's responsible for creating a happy life for this individual. And I started to realize that that responsibility, although I would love to share that with another person or my partner, the problem was I had been expecting someone else to make me happy. I was expecting someone else to give me the love that I hadn't even begun to understand how to give myself. And I started to realize that my outer relationships were a reflection of the relationship and the degree of self-love that I'd cultivated with myself. That became really clear to me. So there it was, the beginning of my journey to a happy life was, how do I learn to love myself, and what does that really look like?
I love
Um,
that. I love what you said about finding, starting to make choices, really, is what you're saying, isn't it? Choices for yourself. I think for me, the life really started turning around when I realized that I had the power to do that. I had the power to listen to myself, make better choices, listen to my body, which was telling me, go for that person or not for that person, or go for that job or not for that job. And slowly that power sort of built up inside. And I sort of see self-love on different layers. I don't know how you feel about this, but I see that first part of the journey is understanding that we are not powerless, that we can make those choices to look after ourselves.
mhm.
And after that, when you sort of stop being that, that's when the layer opens up even more, because nobody really knows what love is. And the next layer of that is, what is that? Where is that place that we go even more deeply into? You said earlier about going home, and the more you love yourself, which I will see you as an example of that. I'm sort of behind you on that you really get that. There's a gap between my understanding of it and yours at the moment.
That's just because I'm old. I mean, I was going to make a
No, I
joke
think we're probably the
about
same
being
age.
older than you. You know,
Yeah.
um, I don't know if that's the case, but I hear and respect that that's how it seems to you. But certainly, it's something that I've been pondering and exploring for quite a long time. And I have to say, where I'm at now in my life is so grounded in a sense of, again, I want to take it back to, I'm the one who's responsible for creating my happiness and creating a life that's meaningful to me. And then I get to share that with the world around me, including the person that I'm in an intimate relationship with, or romantic relationship, or my friends, or whomever, because this really does radiate from the inside out.
Yes.
And and so again, so for me, the big shift was, like, I wasn't even aware of it until, as an adult, I realized I was not living a life that felt meaningful to me.
Or
I felt,
authentic.
yes, never mind. I didn't even know what my preference, it's so embarrassing. It's embarrassing a little bit, but
No, I
not
understand
really, because I'm so happy to be on the other side of it. I realized, sort of in my mid 30s, that I didn't even know what my preferences were anymore, Marianne. Like, I had given myself away so many times from the time that I reached my teens, trying to get love from outside of myself,
that.
that by the time I really woke up and realized I am miserable, I'm not happy, and it's no one else's fault, I can't pin it on someone else anymore. That's when I really started to look at exploring and developing more awareness around what have I been doing to myself, and how do I take responsibility for my own happiness and my own well-being? And let it start with me.
Mm.
And so as I did that, I started to have, it was incremental. I started to express my opinion, whereas previously I would have kept silent. I wouldn't want to rock the boat. And so, it started very small. It started like, let me have some
Yeah.
self-compassion,
You said something really important though, Catherine, which is, well, you say everything is important that you say, but you said something really important, because I had that moment, and I think that my clients have that moment, is that awakening moment. That awakening moment when you realize what you are sort of doing, I'm getting it from outside. This awakening moment lets you know that there is that little voice inside going, you are really off track and something isn't right. And I certainly had mine, and mine was, I was married at 19, and to a Danish guy that I met on a kibbutz, and I lived in Denmark for 7 years. And I remember on the road back from we were on a boat back from Denmark. I remember being, even now, I remember being in the cabin and saying, when you get back to England, you are never going to be the same. You are going to make sure that you start discovering who you are. And it was all about the inside of me. I needed to go on that journey. And I think that that's part of finding the love for ourselves, isn't it?
Oh, I think so, Marian. In hindsight, I look at it and I would have said, I got the rug pulled out from under me when it came to other people loving me. So 2 failed marriages in my 20s, and just devastation, for 5 or 6 years. But what that did for me, it was like life was saying to me, you're looking in the wrong direction. There was a grace to it. I was stubborn. I was going to, I'll get married again. I have no idea what it means to value myself or love myself, or, but it took, 2 strikes for me to go, okay, I'm looking in the wrong direction, and something within me. There was an author, I worked at a women's shelter. I went to school and I got a college degree, and I worked at a women's shelter. And at that time, I started wondering, as women, it was very politicized, and it was very about the external, creating a society where there's equality. And I love all of that. I'm all for that. But what I didn't see addressed, because I knew it was an issue for myself, was, where is the internal sense of self-worth and
Yeah.
self-respect and acknowledgement of the fact that I am responsible for the life that I'm creating from the inside out in relation to those things. I'm not responsible for someone else's bad behavior towards me, but I am responsible for having the self-awareness to know why I'm staying in a relationship that isn't conducive to my well-being, or when I get out of one, why I had the pattern of getting into another one. So that turned me around, and it was very clear to me that I needed to look at what was going on inside of myself. I needed to really look at the self-respect, the self-love, and the self-worth that I did or didn't have within, and that my outer relationships were going to reflect that to some degree. And that was what started the journey for me, was I realized that no matter what changed on the outside, if I didn't have that sense of a relationship with myself, so my own authenticity, my own inner yes or no. So here's a simple way to look at it. It's like, I once heard Byron Katie say, I'm married to my inner yes or no.
Yeah.
And that's the true marriage, which just means my own authenticity, being an expression, an authentic expression of who I am in the world.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't even know what that would look like when I first started the journey, but once we're looking in that direction, books will come across our way, we'll run into people. As soon as we want to develop that or have clarity around that,
Yeah.
I find that the universe, life supports that
Yeah.
intention. And
It
there was
does.
a yeah. So there was a beautiful author named Stark. I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She wrote a book called Wild Succulent Woman, and she talked about radical self-love, and radical self-compassion, and a lot of those were Buddhist-based
Yeah.
teachings, but those were really the seeds, the beginning of looking in that direction and realizing that I could cultivate that within myself. And it's really practical, Mary, and it is like, oh, you allow yourself to express your opinion, or you allow yourself to be aware of your own preferences. And then it became, oh, I'm taking the responsibility back for my own happiness and for creating a life that feels meaningful to me, instead of a life that was based on what everybody around me thought was meaningful, and yet for me felt empty.
I,
And I realized no one was going to do that for me.
and they won't, because I think that when people ask, what is self-love, what is that? I think you just said something that really encompassed it, which is you're having a relationship with yourself. And once you're having a relationship with yourself, then you're starting to get to know those little patterns that you fall into when you're saying things in a way that is down the old route, the negative pattern. And you also know that you can make a choice to drop that and do it in a way that really comes from your wisdom. You know deep down inside what the right thing to do is. And that always, always, always comes from that beautiful place of wisdom.
It really does.
Self-love is having a relationship, but having a really beautiful relationship with that part of you, your wisdom inside.
I love it. It really comes down to that. And I wanted to talk about what that looked like in practical terms. Like,
Yeah.
what does that really look like? It seems really ethereal, but how it manifested was allowing myself to express my opinion, no matter whether that was disapproved of or not. I used to say, I have friends who laugh because I said for, a long time, I said, I've got a love affair going on, and it's with my own life.
Yeah.
It's this journey of exploration back inside to rediscover this really simple wisdom that's within that I'd lost touch with, because I was so focused on, could I find someone outside to love me?
And don't you think, Catherine, that a lot of people don't know they've even got that? They don't know that.
Yes.
I often talk about the power within ourselves that we don't know that we've got. But in my experience, I didn't know anything. I knew I had an intuition, but I never knew the power of being connected to that. And my clients don't either. So pointing them in that direction is completely life-changing for a lot of people. So yeah, it's so important that we talk about, what do we do when we start noticing that? What is it? And speaking out and all those sorts of things are so important.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Marian, because like you, just exactly, I had my own version of that. When people said, look within, I've said this, there was just this dark void, like, look within, are you
What does
kidding?
that mean? It was a
Wisdom?
concept. It wasn't a reality, it was a concept. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yet there was something drawing me. So I think there's something that draws us to the books that we encounter, to the various people we encounter. There's something within that lights up. It can just be a little flicker. It can just be, why do we read the books we read? Why do we listen to a certain seminar? What draws us to see? Something started to draw me towards a deeper truth about life.
Yeah.
The truth I was going on before was, there's a fairy tale. You'll find someone outside of you to love you. You'll live happily ever after, some version of that, and my own journey was going from that superficial fairy tale to the journey back home, because I'd spent, everything was about trying to get my parents' approval. So I'd given all of my power away, as many of us do, to outside sources, and spent my time trying to get love from the outside.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't until the outside sources failed me miserably and really dramatically that I really turned it around and started to look within and started to cultivate self-compassion and self-awareness around taking responsibility for my happiness and for creating a life again. It was a journey to discover what a meaningful life might look like for me. And I really benefited from a lot of spiritual teachers and a lot of Buddhist teachings that talk about self-compassion and self-awareness. I had to create and cultivate self-awareness in order to even understand what it was that I wanted in life, because I'd lost touch with my own preferences. I'd given that over to, can I please someone outside of myself? So that became a really sacred journey for me, not out of self-absorption, but out of the desire to take responsibility back for my own happiness and for the life that I was living. I began to understand that it was my responsibility to create a life for myself, again, that felt meaningful. So self-love became to me, and I can only talk about what it looks like to me. It'll look different for all of us. Self-love was this acceptance of who I was and who I found myself to be in the moment, rather than who I thought I should be. It meant I could show up as myself, as imperfect as I was, that I learned to develop compassion for that rather than shame. There was a lot of shame going on in me about who I was. I wasn't good enough, obviously. I had to be someone different. So self-love was just showing up, allowing myself to show up in the world as the imperfect human being that I was, so that I could grow and learn. And, that continues to this day. And the times when I see how much self-acceptance and self-love I have are usually when someone else withdraws their love from me or withdraws their approval from me. That's when I get to see how grounded I am in my own sense of being okay, just being myself in the world. And I don't know, Marian, I don't think there's any end to that.
No, there isn't at all.
This is the journey of, like, for me, the journey back home to love is what human life is all about. And love for me, again, it's not the romantic notion of love. It's radical self-acceptance, acceptance of who I am in the world. I have a right to be here exactly as I am, as imperfect as I am. And in fact, that's the sacred journey, or the hero's journey, as Joseph Campbell calls it. But that for me was the beginning of, just a life that I didn't know was possible, whether someone else loved me or not. And I think Marian, we go beyond that, and we find that beyond this personality, who I am in my essence is this deep love. Energetically, this field of love that I think all things emanate from. So then we even go beyond the personality, and we drop into this deeper space of absolute, just consciousness that for me has a very loving quality to it, and intelligence. And then we find we have access to that and can navigate our lives from that place. So,
yeah, I think it's really important to remind people that journey of discovering who you are and how you love yourself is a journey that's incredibly personal to you.
Yeah, yes.
Because when you start going on that journey, as you said, you're drawn to books and things. We're not all drawn to the same stuff, all the same people. But we
Okay.
will, once we open up the opportunity to go on that journey, that we start uh, connecting with things that resonate with us personally. So that's really important, because nobody's going to do it the same. So when people want that sort of to-do list from me, or the technique, there isn't. You need to go on that journey and start discovering yourself. But I'd love to, and yes, I do want to talk about that essence at the end, but I'd love to ask, and lots of people have this question that they ask me is, okay, so if I begin to accept myself and use my empower and all those sorts of things, what can I do, or how can I understand things better, so when people don't like me, or they tell me I'm wrong, or whatever it is, that I don't lose that. What am I not seeing? That's that because lots of people do lose it, and they lose that and they start doubting themselves. So I know you've hit that level of when somebody withdraws, that it doesn't affect you. So I'd love to hear about that.
Okay, I'm not sure it doesn't affect me, but it doesn't devastate me
Yeah.
like it used to.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I'm going to just, sorry, I didn't turn that, silence that. I'm going to do that. This is such a super, super question. I alluded to it just a few minutes ago. I think we go in and out of it, and again, as a personal journey, it's, as you said, it's going to look different for everyone. And I think we go in and out of clarity. And so as I began on the journey, I mean, we stop being authentic when someone withdraws their love from us.
Yeah.
It's like, and it starts very early in childhood. It's like when we just show up as we are, and we all are told some version of, don't be that, be this. This is bad, that's good, this is acceptable. Some of that is really necessary, and it's innocent in a lot of ways for most of us. But once we internalize that, we're trying to be what we need to be loved and accepted in the world. And we carry that into adulthood. So for me, it becomes an unraveling of that. But when someone withdraws their approval from me, that is giving me an opportunity to see genuinely how much self-love, self-acceptance, and self-compassion I actually have going on. I can think I'm doing great while I'm getting the love and acceptance from the outside that I enjoy, that we all enjoy, right? And I don't think there's any easy answer. I didn't find an easy answer, Marian. I just realized that I was the one who needed to love and accept me, whether other people could or not. Like, that was the big turnaround for me. Once I was really clear about that, I understood and came to understand that I couldn't see it clearly until I was in a situation where it was being withdrawn. And in that moment, because I knew that it was my job and not theirs, I love it when people love me and accept me and appreciate me. I love that. It's my job first, though, So let's say when my partner, can't love me unconditionally for some reason, because he's just, a normal human being like me. Every time he wasn't able to, I got to be there for myself.
That's beautiful, Catherine. I've just got to hold that for a moment, because that is so important, that every time somebody seemingly withdraws their love, it is an opportunity to connect to our own love.
It was an opportunity for me to show up for myself.
Yeah. To nurture yourself, accept yourself, all those things. Yeah.
Marian, I can't tell you how much knowing that
Oh, I
changed
heard that.
life,
I just
right?
had a great insight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because we can't control what the outside world, how they
Yeah.
respond to us. But as soon as you start showing up for yourself, your life becomes this journey back home to the love. Think of yourself when you were a toddler, man. You were going around exploring life.
Yeah.
You didn't have this self-conscious idea of I need to be this and not that. I need to look this way or that way. I'm gauging whether they accept me or approve of me. No, you were in the world. It was an adventure, and you were just exploring what it meant to be alive. And so for me, this journey back home shifted my focus from, oh, how am I doing? Do they like me? Are they accepting me? Are they going to leave me? To being really grounded in this beautiful exploration of learning to express myself authentically in the world. And the really that is love. Expressing myself authentically in the
Yeah.
world is me loving myself. I give myself permission to be here authentically.
Yeah.
Now that's independent of anybody approving of it, liking it, supporting it, or or any of the rest of it, because many people won't be able to.
No.
And I realized that that's my commitment. My commitment is to show up in the world as myself and to learn and grow from that.
Mm.
And the irony for that, Marion, is that it turned me from, a selfish ego who needed love and appreciation from the outside to a freer human being showing up in the world with love to offer.
Mm.
Because I was no longer running around looking for it in the world. I found a deep wellspring of love within me.
Mm.
And it was a journey to
And
rediscovering that.
I had the same, definitely, that when I went on that journey from, God, for years, but 27 onwards, really, that the discovery of this world inside of me and that love inside of me and who I really was has been the most profound thing I've ever experienced. So, and it continues. And
I think that's a beautiful thing, Marion, is that once you get a glimpse of this, it
Mm.
isn't that you don't need love and appreciation from outside. Obviously, we're meant to be connected and to support one another and to love one another. But now my relationship, instead of looking for the love of someone else to complete me or make me feel better internally, the love is, how do we support one another?
Yeah.
In creating a loving life that supports each person in the relationship.
Mm.
And that only comes from a person who's really connected to this inner wisdom. Yeah. Their sense of love comes from knowing who and what they are and their essence. And then we can live that out in the world.
Mm.
And
That's beautiful.
It goes from being really, really practical, Marion, like really practical. Oh, I sleep. I feed myself well.
Mm.
I listen to my body, like you said.
Mm.
I get up and stretch when I need to get up and I take back the sovereignty, like, of this body and this mind. It's no longer someone else's property.
Yeah.
It's like I'm the one who has to listen and move and get food and nourish myself and listen to music or do yoga or I need to explore what it is that I need to take care of myself. It's like, how do I learn to love and take care of and take responsibility for my own well-being? That's love to me. How do I be responsible for my well-being to the degree that I'm capable? And the degree that I'm capable to do that will increase if I look in that direction.
Yes. And we love sharing that with people. So before we finish, and we haven't got long, Catherine, and you know what it's like when we get on another subject.
I know.
So why don't we finish with that, going that one step further to the beautiful energy of love inside of us? because I'd love you to talk about that.
Yeah. It's really, I guess, the ultimate coming home is recognizing that we are so much more than our ego and our personality,
Mm.
that construct that we created to navigate life
Yeah.
with. So the culmination of this journey of learning to love myself, I won't say ended, but sort of threw me into this world where I understood that who I was beyond my personality was this essence of love.
Mm.
And love in the sense of pure consciousness, pure awareness, an intelligence that's behind all of life. And that was articulated for me in the language of the three principles, but
Yeah.
is articulated in all of the great spiritual traditions, around the world. And so now, realizing that I have access to that within myself, and we all do, that wellspring of resilience and love is who I really am in my essence. And that plays out in my life through clarity and a deeper ability to navigate life with greater grace and ease, no matter what the ups and downs are. So that's, for me, that's tapping into the divine that's within us all, Marian. Yeah. But you can articulate that in different ways.
When you go on the journey of discovering who you are and getting connected to yourself, it automatically it opens the door to this other world as well, though.
It's true.
And the more that you really connect with yourself, suddenly one day that door does open and you start actually feeling it, experiencing it, and intuitively understanding it more.
It's almost like a portal opens, isn't it, Marianne? I mean, it can sound really weird, but I'm telling you, it's like a portal opens. And I think we have this intuitive voice of wisdom within us, but we've ignored it. This is how I think about it. I ignored it for so long. I had it conditioned out of me. I had to listen to the outside voices. I thought, right? And so I lost sight of this intuitive wisdom that's within. Yeah. And again, the journey home was about giving less authority to those outside voices and learning to listen within to that inner wisdom. And I used to call it just following my heart, learning to trust my heart again, rather than the little insecure intellectual part of me that was trying to please the world. My heart was calling me to a different way of being in the world. And I think that's within us all. And it's a place of love and clarity and peace. It doesn't mean we don't have the same ups and downs as anyone, but there's a deep sense of being at home, finally. And that living from this place authentically allows me to learn and grow. I'm on my path and I know it. And so once we're home, everything that happens to us is just an opportunity to expand in understanding and to learn and grow, and giving myself that gift, knowing that my own life is sacred, my path is sacred. I think everybody's path is sacred. That's love. That's showing up in the world authentically, having a voice, allowing myself to learn and grow and evolve. And there's no end to that. So I know we have to go, but I had this beautiful poem. Can I just read it?
Yeah, you can. And that was a beautiful place to finish. Thank you.
So there's a poem that you may have heard of, one of my favorite poems. It's by a man named Derek Walcott, Wallcott. Oh, Walcott. He won the Nobel Prize in 1992 for literature. He's from the West Indies. But the poem is called Love After Love, and it really speaks to coming home to yourself beautifully. So I'll just read it to end. Love after love. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread. Give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life.
That was
So
beautiful.
look it
That was
up. It's
really
such a
fabulous.
beautiful poem. You come back home to yourself, and all of this seeking for the love outside stops. And in that, you come from a place of love and have something to offer the world around you.
Oh, Catherine, this has just been a great conversation again. I love our conversations. They're my favorite day of the week.
I
So,
do too. My conversations with you, Marian, are a part of the way that I love myself.
oh, thank you. It's great. Thank you. I love that. While you were talking, I heard you say something and I thought, oh, that's the subject for next week. So, and the subject next week is going to be how you show up for yourself.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So until next week, Catherine.
Take care. Always good.